Welcome to the LDN radio show, brought to you by the LDN Research Trust. I'm your host, Linda Elseygood. I have an exciting lineup of guest speakers who are LDN experts in their field. We will be discussing low-dose naltrexone and its many uses in autoimmune diseases, cancers, etc. You're invited to join us on air, asking your questions by calling in on the local rate phone numbers in the UK and the US, which can be found on ldnradio.org. Thank you for joining us. Today's guest is nutritionist and researcher Jill Brook, who said most New Year's resolutions fizzle out before Valentine's Day, but research has revealed numerous clever strategies to make them more successful. Jill will discuss the latest findings and how to most effectively reach health goals, such as lose fat, improve sleep, reduce inflammation, train taste buds to generally prefer healthier food, reduce appetite, lose interest in junk food, and reduce cravings. Beat food addictions, put healthy habits on autopilot, conserve willpower, avoid common pitfalls, and other bang-for-your-buck health strategies. This show is sponsored by our members who made donations. We'd like to give them a very big thank you. We have to cover the monthly costs of the radio station's software, bandwidth, phone lines and phone calls to be able to continue with the radio show. And thank you for listening. Welcome back to the show, Jill. What's a better way of starting the new year than with a plan to help improve your health? We all know that junk food has no nutritional value, but what should we be doing? I'm sure we're all eager to listen to what you have to say.
Well, thank you, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. So what should we be doing? Where should we start with the new year to put plans in place that we can actually start and continue throughout the year?
Well, I think you just said the magic word, is putting things in place that we can actually continue. Because I was just looking up some data on New Year's resolutions, and the latest survey that came out said that about 50% of New Year's resolutions have to do with health. Usually it's either lose weight or get fit or some version of that. And only about 8% of them stick. So that's a pretty dismal rate. So I think this kind of goes in the category of most of us all know what we should be doing, but knowing doesn't always help us do it. It just helps us feel guilty when we don't do it. But luckily, there's some really good research out there about how to kind of bridge that chasm between knowing what to do and actually doing it. So those are some fun things that probably make sense to talk about today.
Most definitely. I know the guilt thing. I've always had trouble with my weight. I always have to be very, very careful. I gain weight easily. And then, just like you're saying, you're in a situation, you eat something you shouldn't, then you feel so guilty, then that makes you want to eat even more what you shouldn't to console yourself. It's like a vicious circle, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And I think what we have to remember is that we're fighting our own biology, and that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how smart we are, how accomplished we are, how good our willpower is in most areas of life, but we are animals, and animals have survival instincts. And none of us got here today by having instincts that said, no, don't eat that, or I don't like sweets, or salt isn't good. people with those instincts didn't survive famines that happened in the last, millions of years. Those people, their genetics died with them. And so I like to remember that the genetics that we hate, that makes it so hard to change our eating habits and hard to avoid sweets and salty and fatty foods, and that makes it so easy to overeat, those are the same genetics that got us here today. So so that helps it to be a little more forgiving of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So what should we do? How do we... I'm a list person. Could we sit and make a list of what it is we should be doing, something to follow?
Yeah, I'm a list person too, so that works for me. So I think everybody's different, and I really believe in a start with where you're at approach, but there are some things that are universal to any resolution, any goal that you want to make. And so we could kind of start with those general ones, and we could talk about specific ones afterwards. But in general, any resolution that is going to have a good chance of sticking, first of all, it needs to be something that is directly within your control. And that might sound obvious, but very commonly people make resolutions that are not directly in their control. For example, if you think about it, when you say lose weight, sleep better, get fit, there's a lot of things that can intervene. There's a lot of things that can determine whether you sleep well or not tonight. Or whether you wake up weighing 1 pound more or 1 pound less. Just how humid it is, your hormones. A lot of things can affect that. So for starters, you want to start with resolutions for things that you directly control. Things that are measurable, so that you know if you accomplished your goal that day or not. Another one, people always talk about realistic goals. They talk about it, but they still tend not to always do it. And another important thing for any resolution is to focus on what you will do instead of on what you won't do. So, for example, lots of people say, I won't eat sugar, or I'll cut out alcohol or caffeine, or I won't overeat. And it's proven that that is a lot tougher to do than to instead focus on what you will do instead. So, for example, if you say you're not going to overeat at dinner, well, what are you going to do when everyone else is sitting there and they're still eating? Even if you just say, I will make great conversation, I will make eye contact and make jokes, at least it gives you something to focus on doing instead of to sit there just trying to keep from doing something. Other things that make resolutions more realistic and more successful is to really think through the logistics of how they'll work out. So, for example, lots of people make great resolutions without thinking through the exact time it's going to take to carry them out, the exact money it's going to cost, the effect on their family. So really making specific things and just thinking through how they're going to fit into your daily and weekly routine is a big deal. And that comes back again, because at the end of the day, the number one biggest thing that determines whether you're going to succeed in the long term is whether you're going to get your new habit onto autopilot. Because willpower is a sprinter. Willpower is not a distance athlete. And so I think you pretty much need to assume that within 6 weeks, you're no longer going to have the desire or the energy to use willpower every single day to get the job done. You want to have turned the behavior into an automatic habit by that point. And research has some neat things to say about faster, easier ways to turn a behavior into an automatic habit. But they all pretty much involve fitting it into your routine. So, for example, let's say you want to get exercising every day. You're much more likely to turn that into an automatic habit if you do the same thing in the same way, in the same place, at the same time every day, so that it gets onto automatic pilot faster. So it's kind of like driving to work, how the first time you drive to work at a new place, it's hard and you have to think about it a lot. But after you've done it every morning for a couple weeks, you can think about other things. It just automatically happens and you don't even realize you do it. those are the goals. Those are the resolutions that really end up sticking. The ones that can get onto autopilot. So I'd say that would be kind of the list. One more big one is that I think that you're bound to fail if you are trying to get yourself to do something that is delaying the gratification too much. So a lot of people say, I'm going to do some tough behavior day in and day out, and in a month or a year when I've done it, I'm going to give myself some big reward. And that also is proven not to be very effective. It's much better if you can bake in some reward while you do the behavior. So, you hear about people who will attach their exercise bikes to their television so that they can only watch television if they're biking, or people who get a really good book on tape and they only let themselves listen to it when they're walking. If you can find some way to make the behavior itself rewarding, that's a lot better than doing something you hate, telling yourself that you'll reward yourself later on. Mm-hmm. So I think those would be the things that kind of apply to any resolution. And then there's a lot of neat tips and tricks, and you might call them hacks, that could apply to specific resolutions. And those are, I kind of like to work those in too, because it's just working smarter. But they kind of depend on what your ultimate goal is.
I would like to focus on healthy eating, which would then lead to weight loss for those people that maybe aren't as energetic and able to exercise to burn off the calories. So by not putting so much in, there isn't so much to burn off. Do you get what I'm saying? To become healthier that way. But when you were saying about things becoming habit, I was reading that people in the new year say that they've signed up to go to a gym and they're going to go 3 times a week. That's the aim. But psychologically, if you've missed 3 sessions, you have told yourself you've quit. You've broken that pattern, and you don't have to go anymore because you don't go to the gym. Just by missing 3, which I found was really interesting. It stopped becoming a habit, and it's easy to just give up. And how many people give up going to the gym?
Yeah, it's amazing. And there's also interesting research showing that, I forgot what the actual number was, but I think it was about 12. If it takes you more than 12 minutes to get to the gym, you tend not to stick with it. And it kind of emphasizes how convenience is such a huge factor in all of this. And it also brings up, I'm a big fan of, even if a person is injured or a little bit under the weather and they cannot do their normal workout, I'm a big fan of having them go to the gym anyway, even if all they do is stretch or sit in the hot tub or even just socialize with people, because it keeps them in the habit of driving there, going there, checking in, so that you do preserve the automatic habit that you've worked so hard to make. Because, yeah, you're right, losing it just because you missed 3 times is pretty depressing. Mm-hmm.
Definitely. We've got some questions here. And there's a question from Milo, who says, I'm overweight by about 40 pounds and I've tried many times to lose it, but it always comes back. I've heard that yo-yo dieting is bad. So isn't it a bad idea for New Year's resolutions to be about weight if I'm probably going to gain it back anyway?
I think that's a really smart question. And yeah, I think Milo is right that yo-yo dieting can take a toll on your metabolism. It can make you lose muscle and lean tissue and bone density. And it can also just be really discouraging. So I think it's smart to make other resolutions that would be healthy and would probably have the effect of making you lose some weight anyways, things that feel more maintainable. So, for example, I think one of the easiest things anybody can decide to do is to start drinking some green tea. It's easy, it's healthy, it's proven to help relax you, it helps you boost your metabolism, makes you burn a little extra fat, prevents cancer, and, getting kind of just one good bang for your buck habit in there to start your day off is kind of motivating. I'd say if that doesn't feel like that would be his thing, then, maybe work on something else that feels like a maintainable change. Maybe, for example, doing a relaxing activity, keeping his hands busy at night. It's proven that if you have an activity that keeps your hands busy, especially at night, you tend to lose weight, and it's because you don't munch. So whether it's playing a video game or painting or using a Rubik's Cube or knitting, whatever it is, having busy hands at night is a good thing. So these are just examples, but I think if I were Milo, I'd be thinking about things that are super specific and more enjoyable and things that feel like they're maintainable. But one other thing I'd say about New Year's resolutions is try not to have fragile ones. I think a lot of people set themselves up to fail because they want to do one big thing, and if that doesn't happen, then they'll just do nothing. And I'm a really big fan of self-experiments. And the good thing about thinking of every change and every behavior as an experiment is that there's no such thing as failure. There's only learning how to change it or to do it better next time. And so if you kind of think about this as an endeavor to learn about yourself and what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and, that old adage to try to fail better next time, and I think that is a more satisfying way to think about it. And it also goes along with the finding that on average, it takes people 6 or 7 tries to lose weight before they succeed at it. And it's just because they're learning things about themselves. They're just learning what works and what doesn't. And it's just things as simple as, oops, I guess I can't start a bag of chips because if I eat one, I'll eat the whole bag. If you learn these things about yourself and take them to heart, you get a little bit smarter and wiser every time, and that can be your progress. So you haven't failed. You've just gotten smarter about how to approach it. So you can always just fail better next time.
That sounds like really good advice. Okay, we're just going to have a quick break and we'll be back in a minute. The LDN Research Trust is very proud of the LDN book, which was launched at the LDN 2016 conference in Orlando and has been a great success, not only for the medical profession, but for the patients wanting to learn more about low-dose naltrexone. Full details can be found on the homepage of the LDN Research Trust. Discounts are available on bulk orders of the book, which is 10 or more. For details, email me, linda@ldnrt.org, telling me how many copies you wish and where you live. I will then be able to get Chelsea Green Publishing to contact you. $2017 special offer from Chelsea Green Publishing. Free shipping for US non-bookstore retailers on orders of 25 books or more. For full details, email me, linda@ldnrt.org. This show is sponsored by our members who made donations. We'd like to give them a very big thank you. We have to cover the monthly costs of the radio station's software, bandwidth, phone lines and phone calls to be able to continue with the radio show. And thank you for listening. Welcome back, Jill. This next question could have come from me. It says, it's from Carrie, and she says, I know how I should eat, and I do it most of the time, but I have 5 to 10 minutes per day when I lose it. I eat everything bad and I can't stop myself. I've ruined the entire day. Then I'm back to normal, but the whole day is ruined in terms of meeting my goals. Does this happen to other people? What strategies will help with that?
Yeah, I think this is super common, and I've worked a lot with a lot of very high-achieving people who have, conquered every area of their lives, and they wonder, how come I can't conquer this? And it kind of comes back to what I was saying before about survival instincts. I really, truly believe there's nothing stronger, within you than your instincts for survival, which means, you have biological urges that will go for the calorie-dense foods when available, and especially when you're stressed, or if you have low blood sugar, or if you're sleep deprived. And so I think the key really is to trying to harness these instincts and to use finesse more than force and try to change these instincts. So last time we spoke a little bit about changing your taste buds, and there's a lot of ways that you can do that, which I could go into again if you want me to. There's ways that you can shrink your appetite. A big one is just getting more sleep and reducing stress and eating more slowly. There's a whole category of things that I like that I kind of call outsourcing your willpower, because I like to think of your body as kind of a ship, and Captain Willpower is at the head of the ship, and he's doing a great job of steering everything, and he knows just what to do. But you have some other shipmates, and it's your taste buds, it's your appetite, it's your old habits, it's social influences, it's cravings. And, the minute that Captain Willpower turns his back for 5 minutes just to take a quick nap or something, these other things come in and they can get the ship, all on the wrong path. So if you can kind of train those other things to help steer the ship, it can make a really big difference. So, things, like we talked about taste buds, things like getting rid of toothpaste and overflavored things like mouthwash and mints can help make your taste buds more sensitive. You can do things like reduce your cravings by first of all, preventing cravings that are based on like true biological needs. Like if you're well hydrated, you're less likely to crave salt. If you don't let your blood sugar get too low, you're less likely to crave sugar. Some cravings are just a matter of not letting new ones take hold. It's proven that it only takes about 3 days of eating something sweet at the same time in the same place, and then your body, it's kind of like a puppy. It just starts to learn, oh, hey, isn't this the time and place where I get that treat? And it starts to think about them and want them. So I like to be, super careful about not letting myself do anything 3 days in a row. You can change the social influences on your behavior by kind of recruiting helpers. I'm a big fan of, using family members to do what you want. You can, you can either tell your kids, I'll give you a quarter every time you, put the junk food out of sight so I can't see it. Maybe put it on a top shelf. You can ask your spouse, hey, you're so nice to give me a foot massage every night, but, don't give it to me if you see me eating dessert. And you can kind of, they call it self-blackmail. Some people go so far with the self-blackmail as there's a website, I think it's called Stick. And what you can do is make a contract so that if you do something that you don't want yourself to do, they will take money from you and send it to a cause that you absolutely hate. So, for example, I know people who have said, okay, if I go back on my gluten-free policy, then $150 gets sent to the American Nazi Party. And I hate the idea of that so much that will keep me from ever breaking that promise. So it's kind of funny that a website actually exists to help do that. But it can also be other things like, I know people who have told the waiter or the waitress at their favorite restaurant, hey, don't even bring me the menu for dessert. Just, bring me berries. So getting other people in on it can be helpful too. And I think that when it comes to that 5-10 minutes a day where you know you're going to kind of lose it, I think one of the best things you can do is kind of reflect on it, get to know, is it predictable? Is it always at the same time? Is it at the same place? And ask yourself, what is it that you're really looking for at that time? Are you looking for an energy boost, or is it a time of day where you're just bored and you need some stimulation? Are you lonely? Is your blood sugar getting low? And it might take a little trial and error, but probably you can solve that problem in a way that's less damaging to your goals. And if all else fails, you can always do something like get one of those food safes where you can lock away the tempting treats for any amount of time that you choose. And so that, in the morning you can leave out, the number of treats that you have decided are okay, so that at a time when you have good willpower, you lock yourself into a rule for the times when you know you'll have bad willpower. And that one, they call that an Odysseus contract, which is kind of interesting because Odysseus, he strapped himself to or he had his men strap him to the boat when he knew that he was going to be going past the sirens, because he knew he would not be able to resist the call of their beautiful voices. And so you're in good company if you have to do that. You don't have to feel guilty. That's not weakness. That's what that's what people oftentimes have to do. And so those are some strategies to try. And I think, like everything, a little trial and error to see what works for you is the thing to do. And when you try something and it doesn't work, don't worry about it. Just get smarter about it. Just let that be, the experiment that helps you shape your attempt for next time.
And we have an email from Monica who says, how can she put more vegetables into her diet? She's not that keen on vegetables. How could she disguise them so she's eating healthier?
So there's a lot of great ways you could do it. Jerry Seinfeld, the comedian, his wife wrote a cookbook all about this. And I think it was in the context of doing it for kids, but she had all kinds of great ideas about how you could puree vegetables into other foods to hide them and not notice them too much. Things like pasta sauce or soups or macaroni and cheese and all kinds of things. There's a kind of a whole category of vegetables that you can make them kind of feel like non-vegetables. So one popular tool right now is called a Spiralizer, and it lets you turn something like squash or zucchini or cucumbers into pasta noodles. And then you can just treat them like normal pasta, hot or cold. So a lot of people are enjoying that. A lot of people are getting into ricing cauliflower or broccoli, which means just chopping it up so that it has the same texture and consistency of rice, and then just treating it like rice and eating it that way.
Heard of that.
Yeah, and then once you do that, you can kind of do all sorts of things. So making cauliflower into a pizza crust is a really popular thing right now, or making flatbread out of cauliflower. So if you Google these things, you'll find all kinds of recipes, because, you're not alone in not loving the vegetables. But I'd say one other tip, there is a way to kind of trick yourself into liking vegetables more. There's two tricks, actually. One is to eat them right after exercising. And for whatever reason, they find that right after exercise, people like fruits and vegetables more. And they think it's because you're probably a little bit dehydrated. So eating really watery foods feels extra satisfying. And another thing that you can do is when you're super ravenous, if you have a time when you kind of know you tend to just be starving, they have found that whatever you eat at that moment, you get a little bit addicted to. And it's probably because your body is associating satisfying a great need with whatever the flavor of the food is. So I've known people who, they actually plan to have a big veggie meal ready to go for at a time when they know they'll be starving. And that's a way to kind of back into it. And I'd say another one is to kind of replace crunchy munchy snacks with some of the crunchy vegetables. So things like jicama sticks dipped in, something like guacamole or hummus can kind of feel like a replacement for chips. And you can do the same thing with water chestnuts. Sliced water chestnuts are very crunchy, and those tend to be ways that people get a little more excited about it. And remember that your taste buds change. Remember that a taste bud only lives for 4 weeks. And as soon as the old desensitized taste buds are dead and gone and the new virgin fresh ones are growing in, that they're going to like whatever they eat. I'm reminded of a client that I once had. When I told him this about the taste buds, he said, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. That's why I love the flavor of snake. Rattlesnake is the most delicious thing I can imagine." And it turned out that he had been in some special forces unit that he was not allowed to talk about, but they had been forced to live off the land for a month, and they didn't get a lot to eat. But one of the meals that they did manage to get was rattlesnakes. And whatever you eat when you're really hungry is something you learn to love. So I always thought that if he could learn to be excited about rattlesnakes, then probably the rest of us can learn to be excited about just about anything.
What about vegetable smoothies? I've not actually tried that myself. What do you put into a vegetable smoothie? Can it be anything?
Yeah, vegetable smoothie can be just about anything. And I have not talked to too many people who do only vegetables, because those can get pretty bitter. I think if you wanted to do a pure vegetable smoothie, maybe the thing to do is add a little salt, heat it up, and just make it into a pureed soup. But as far as smoothies, usually a little bit of fruit to make it a tad bit sweet. And I would say try to fit the rainbow in there. Try to, experiment, have fun, doing all kinds of things. Now, one downside of smoothies is just to remember that when you don't chew your food, it's not going to feel as filling or as satisfying. So for people who are trying to lose weight, there is a great value to chewing the food. Also, if you are trying to get your digestion to speed up a little bit, the act of chewing is really valuable for triggering the peristalsis of your intestines. And then there's also some concern that when you suck down fruits or vegetables, you're just able to do it so much faster than if you actually had to chew, because they're, of course, super fibrous. That it's easy to overeat. So maybe just go slow, try to sip, try to make it last a half hour instead of sucking it down, because you don't want to overwhelm your body. If you imagine that it's the equivalent of, sucking down a salad in just a couple moments' time, you could overwhelm your stomach a bit. Yeah, I'd say experiment, have fun. If there's all kinds of recipes online that people have made, but you kind of can't go wrong.
Okay.
I guess one more thing I'd add is that they are finding that there's a huge value to getting more variety. So, for example, there was a study done where they measured the antioxidant value of, I think it was raspberries, and then one other vegetable. I forget what it was. And each on their own, they had nice antioxidant value, but when they combined them together, it was more than double. So there's a real synergy. And so the thinking is that if you can, instead of just only doing, an apple and some lettuce, maybe try putting in as many different plant foods as you can find in your kitchen, put them all together, and even if it's just a tiny sprig of this or that, there's a real value to combining all those things.
Well, that's interesting. And we have another question, which is also could be my question, from Peyton, who says, everyone says lose weight slowly, but I won't stay motivated if I don't see fast enough progress. Is it really that bad to lose weight fast and then eat normally once you've got it off?
So, yeah, I understand that. And I agree that willpower is better at a sprint than a long-term thing. But I would say that why don't you need to redefine what your idea of slow is, because when you lose weight fast, you're not losing fat faster, you're losing muscle and you're losing bone density and you're losing water. And you don't want to lose those things. Those things are going to make you less healthy, and it's going to make it harder to keep off the fat. So when you really lose fat, then 1 pound is a lot. 1 pound looks like 4 sticks of butter. So, if you took a stick of butter off your body every week for a year, that is a huge amount of weight. And yet people are not happy with only losing a 1/4 pound a week. And so try to, keep your head on straight about that. And the other thing I'd say is that, remember, the prize is not the weight, because the weight is only going to stay off for as long as you can keep the habits going. And something like 95% of people who lose weight gain it back. So remember that the prize is a set of maintainable habits that get you to the weight you want and keep you there. And so, people say, so when am I there? You're not there when you've lost 10 pounds or whatever it is you're trying to lose. You're there when your taste buds like eating the healthy foods, and when you're in the habit of buying the right things and preparing them, and when you are in the habit of eating slowly so you don't eat too much. So if you kind of focus on the right prize, it changes your likelihood of success. And so that's my way of saying, I wouldn't recommend losing weight fast, because the statistics suggest that isn't going to work out too well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The next question is from Sandra, and she says, the last time you were on the radio show, you talked about changing taste buds so that they wouldn't want sweets anymore. Can you explain that in more depth? She says, how can I make my taste buds dislike chocolate brownies, peanut butter cookies, peanut butter cups, and anything with peanut butter and chocolate in them?
I can relate to that. I can definitely relate to that. Baskin-Robbins peanut butter and chocolate ice cream used to be my thing. So taste buds, like all of our senses, can really change. Just like our eyes can adapt when you go from a very dark room to a very bright room. At first everything is too bright, but your eyes change until, the amount of light is just right. And your taste buds do the same thing. And the way they do it is, taste buds are like hair, where you're always growing more and the old ones die and the new ones grow in and replace them. And a taste bud lasts for about 4 weeks. And as soon as it is exposed to something very, very stimulating, the equivalent of that bright light, it gets desensitized. And it's just a way for it to protect itself. So, as soon as you have the Kool-Aid or whatever it is, something super sweet or super salty or super unnaturally flavored, and I think mouthwash is probably the extreme example of this, then those taste buds get desensitized. They're kind of deadened. So now when you go to eat an apple, it tastes like absolutely nothing. It can't get anything out of there. And so that's when you need to keep eating these really, really stimulating things to get any pleasure whatsoever. But the good news is that if you can hold out for a couple weeks and avoid the really stimulating flavors, then the old desensitized ones will die and the new ones will grow in. And to these new virgin taste buds, an onion tastes super salty, and celery tastes salty, and a carrot tastes really sweet, and a pecan practically tastes like, cake, because it's, a little sweet and fatty. And you just, you have to try it to believe it. I hear this every day from people that they are just absolutely blown away at how much better food tastes when they cut out things that are sort of unnaturally flavored. And also just how much more interesting and complex and nuanced things taste. So I know that the peanut butter and chocolate tastes amazing because it's got the salt and the sugar and the fat. But when you let your taste buds get really sensitive and you just actually eat a peanut, you'll notice that a real peanut has so many interesting, complex substances in it that taste way more interesting than a peanut butter cookie ever did, for example. And so, unfortunately, the only thing, though, that I know of that can make your taste buds more sensitive is sort of riding it out for a little while. But you can start to see this work even just overnight. So if you've ever had, dinner at night and it tasted pretty good, and then you have the leftovers in the morning and it tastes even better, I think that's what's happening. I think your taste buds just become more sensitive overnight. And so now all of a sudden the morning pizza tastes so much more flavorful. And so if you can kind of have faith and ride that out for 2 days and 3 days and watch things get better, do the almonds test. Have an almond every day and rate how good it tastes. And you'll notice that every day it gets a little more interesting and delicious. And that can be really motivating. And then also make sure to get rid of anything that is blitzing your taste buds, like the mouthwash. And if you switch to a more natural toothpaste, that'll help. Get rid of things like cough drops. Fake sweeteners that are sweeter than sugar are a really big one that can do it. And then you can take advantage of temperature. So, for example, sweets taste sweeter when they're warm, and they taste less sweet when they're cold. So for the same amount of sweetener, hot chocolate will taste sweeter than ice cream. So that's another way to get more flavor for less sugar during that time that you're letting your taste buds evolve. And so, I would just say, give it a try and watch what happens. And if you're like most people, you'll learn to really kind of prize those sensitive taste buds, because everything tastes amazing when you have nice sensitive taste buds.
Fantastic. Well, we'll just have another quick break and we'll be back with some more questions. Thank you. The LDN Research Trust has its own forum, which can be found forum.ldnresearchtrust.org or via our website. The forum is divided into sections, so it's easy to navigate and find what you're looking for. You can share your experience, ask questions, keep a journal, etc. Unlike Facebook, the posts are always easy to find and don't get buried. We have a private medical professionals only section. To find out more, please email me, linda@ldnrt.org. This show is sponsored by our members who made donations. We'd like to give them a very big thank you. We have to cover the monthly costs of the radio station's software, bandwidth, phone lines and phone calls to be able to continue with the radio show. And thank you for listening. We have a really interesting question here from Cora, and she says, my New Year's resolutions are A, to eat better, and B, to spend less money. And how can I do both at once? Aren't healthy foods more expensive? How can I save money and eat healthily?
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was just reading an interesting article about this, and it is true that per calorie, healthy foods are more expensive, but not per nutrient. So if you are somebody who needs a whole lot of calories, if you have a very active job or you're a pro athlete and you need to eat 10,000 calories a day, then eating healthy is tough. But if you're like most people and you need the nutrients more than you need the calories, it turns out that per nutrient, healthy foods are way less expensive. And the example they said was, I think that per nutrient, a burger is something like 17 times more expensive than a bowl of soup. So I thought that was interesting. So things that you can do for starters, the number one thing you can do is just eat out less. So if you're eating at restaurants, that is probably expensive and unhealthy. Another thing is to cut down on any drinking, because alcohol is expensive, and really any kinds of drinks that you buy out are, probably costing more than they would need to if you made them at home, for example. But a really huge one that has the added bonus of also being good for the environment is to have more meals that are meat-free. So doing more beans and lentils or peas. Those things are super inexpensive, and it'll probably also make you lose some weight, lower inflammation, lower your risk of cancer. And so that's kind of a win-win altogether. Making your own soups at home can be a great way to go, especially if you are interested in losing a few pounds at the same time, because it's proven that when you eat things in a soup form, you just eat fewer calories just because it's so filling to eat watery foods. And of course, the water's free, so you can make your veggies and your beans and lentils and grains go a lot further if you make soups. More and more people are growing their own fruits and vegetables and herbs, either at home or in community gardens. So that's something you could see if they have that near you. You're also seeing more like little mini co-ops spring up, where just like neighbors will go in together to buy in bulk from the local Costco or the local farmers market. And I guess my last idea for you is, if you do have farmers markets near you, go at closing time, because oftentimes the farmers would rather sell them really cheap than pack up all their heavy fruits and vegetables and take them home with them. So you can find some amazing deals then too. And even if you have to buy, 5 pounds of green beans or whatever it is, you could make those up and freeze them and save them for a different time of year. So that you can buy things when they are in season and extra cheap. So I guess that would be, I can't really think of anything else, but that could get you started.
And we have another question here from Kendra, and this is for you. It says, what are your New Year's resolutions, and do you ever fail at reaching them? I'm assuming you're already in shape. I'm sure you are. And what would your resolutions be if you needed to get in shape and get a lot healthier? And you were at your worst? Where would you go to plan getting healthy?
Okay. So that is a good question. And yes, I do fail at reaching my resolutions quite often. And so that's, again, I come back to, I like to think of everything as a self-experiment that I'm continually refining. And so there's no failure. There's only starting a new experiment. Let's see. So as far as what my New Year's resolutions are, this year I'm really taking my gut health very seriously. There's so much that is now known about the microbiome that we didn't know just a few years ago. And so, for example, I'm a POTS patient, and one thing that they teach us to do is to graze all day long, and that is good for keeping your energy up, and it might be good for some of the digestive issues that we have, but it's not good for gut health, because it turns out that you have something called a migrating motor complex, which is a kind of a cleaning wave that your intestines do between meals, but you kind of need to have not eaten for 5 hours for that to happen. And when that cleaning wave happens, it kind of gets all the garbage out and sets the stage for your bacteria to do what they need to do. And so that has been very hard for me to do, to go 5 hours without eating when I'm so used to grazing. So that is one of them. My other thing that I'm doing is I'm working on getting my vitamin D up, because no matter what I do, it never seems to get above 20. So I'm going to sit in front of a vitamin D lamp. I'm going to try some mushrooms that have been under ultraviolet light. To vitamin D, I'm going to do that. I'm already taking pretty high levels of vitamin D3, but I'm going to add some vitamin K to that to see if it helps absorption. And then I guess my last New Year's resolution is to experiment with some intermittent fasting, because there's some pretty interesting research coming out of USC showing that when you give your body a break from eating, there's a few different ways you can do it. You can either eat low calorie for about 5 days in a row, or you can go a couple days without eating, that it can really lower inflammation. And so as somebody with an autoimmune disorder, that is kind of intriguing to me. But I have to be honest and say that what I need to do to make that one stick is I need to figure out what I am going to do instead of just what I'm not going to do, i.e. eat those days, because I'm pretty sure I'll fail if I just tell myself I'm not going to eat for a couple days. I should also say that those are things you only want to do under a doctor's supervision, because fasting isn't always good for you. But so those are things that I'm working on. But I think Kendra's question was, if I was at my worst, what would sort of be the first thing that I would do to take a step in the right direction? I guess I'd say first, I would be very happy that there's research showing that any little step in the right direction is the right thing to do. Not only does it add up, even if you, like for somebody who wants to lose weight, if you just cut out 20 calories a day, that adds up to 20 pounds a decade. So, any little thing, as long as you do it every single day, adds up hugely. But then the other benefit of doing any little good thing is that it helps you take the next step in the right direction. They've done some studies where all they did was have people start taking a multivitamin, and it made them more likely to start doing other healthy behaviors. So I would say it kind of doesn't matter. You can think about what appeals to you. I mentioned green tea. I think green tea is always an easy place to start, having a cup of green tea every day. And if that's easy enough, then maybe add a cup of white tea every day. And if that's easy, maybe add a cup of red tea every day. And those all have great health benefits. I think I think almost any health goal is sort of built on a basis of having good sleep. And so I think that if your sleep isn't already great, then any little thing you can do to improve sleep is going to make you more fit, more lean. It's going to reduce cravings. It's going to help your metabolism. So, for example, some things shown to help you sleep better would be to turn off any computer screens at night an hour before you want to go to bed. Do some gentle stretching at night, because that will get your parasympathetic nervous system more activated and turn off the sympathetic nervous system, help you get more ready for bed. I think cooling down the temperature in your bedroom is shown to make you sleep better. Not eating for 3 hours before you go to bed would be some good ones. Another really easy bang for the buck thing you can do, research shows that people who get rid of their high heels and just wear flat shoes automatically exercise more. So I like that one. It raises your metabolism, gets you sitting less, prevents some knee injuries. So that would be one. So I guess there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, and so find any little healthy thing that you like. If you can do it every day, that would be the thing to do. Yeah.
Okay, and we have a question from Shelley, and she says, I'm pretty good at changing my behaviours for a few weeks, but then I usually go back to my old ways. How do I get my good habits to stick for long term?
So I think the first thing you do is look to your environment. Is there anything you can change in your environment? Because those things are easy, right? You change it once and then it's done. So, for example, if you're, trying to eat more fruit and less cookies, you get rid of your cookie jar and you replace it with a fruit bowl. Things like that. I think last time I was on, I talked about some neat studies done at the Cornell Food Lab, where they find that environmental engineering has a huge effect on your behavior. So anything you can do to not be looking at junk food is going to make you think about it less, want it less, eat less without even trying. And so that would be the first thing. Then the next thing I'd say is really look at a few things you can do to cement your behavior into an automatic habit. And that comes back to just routine, repetition, and consistency. So whatever habit it is you're trying to do, see if you can do it the same way, the same time, the same place, and just practice it until it's as automatic as driving to work in the morning. It's that routine, repetition, consistency that's going to get it to where you don't think about it.
Mm-hmm. You've given us so many really good ideas, and I will definitely get a Spiralizer. That sounded really good to me. What kind of things do you use? What vegetables can you use with that? Any vegetable?
So, let's see. I think the most popular vegetable that I see used is a zucchini because it comes out and it's kind of feels like pasta. You can either heat it up or you can leave it cold. Yellow squash works great, and a cucumber works great. And it has to be something that's kind of cylindrical just because of the shape of the Spiralizer. Mm-hmm. I think carrots would probably work great. And boy, I bet if you Googled zucchini, or if you Google Spiralizer ideas, I'm sure there's people who've come up with some brilliant things. But yeah, when you can feel like you're eating pasta all the time and it's really vegetables, that's a big win.
That's just what I was thinking. I was thinking that is a really must do. So I've taken away from this buying a Spiralizer, putting more vegetables into my diet. And one of the big things probably is not to feel guilty. You know, if you've had something you shouldn't have done, forgive yourself. Tomorrow's a new day and start again. Don't give up. Don't feel guilty, because it only makes you feel depressed and want to give up. So I think I'm taking that away with me as well. It's going to be a new year and a new way of looking at food and being kinder to myself rather than thinking like the other lady, you know, I've blown it, I've ruined the whole day. It's very easy to get into that mindset, isn't it, when you're trying so hard to be good and you feel you've let yourself down, and the guilt thing. I totally get that. So
there's a quote that I like: when it's good, it's great. When it's bad, it's experience.
Yeah, it's very easy. And the other thing I liked that I shall be bearing in mind is that you need to drink plenty of water. If you are hydrated, you're not going to feel as hungry. And with sugar levels, you know, make sure that you don't go too long in between meals so that you don't feel you've got to grab the first thing to eat because you're not feeling so good. You can feel your sugar levels dropping, which would invariably be something junk foodish or full of sugar. So, yeah, I've learned a lot. So, you know, thank you very much for that, Jill. What would you like us to take away from this show?
I would love for you to take away that don't rely on willpower when you can at all rely on something else. If you can use your environment or other people or recruiting your taste buds to change or changing your cravings or appetite, try to change those things before you just rely on willpower, because willpower is a limited resource. So you want to just save it for when you really need it.
That's really good advice. Thank you very much, Jill. And we will have you on again later in the year, and we'll see how people have got on with putting their life on the right track. And next week, we will be back on Monday with Dr. Kent Holtoff. Thank you for joining us. Any questions or comments you may have, please email me, Linda, Linda, at ldnrt.org. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciated your company. Until next time, stay safe and keep well. To listen to individual radio shows and interviews, go to www.mixcloud.com/LDNRT. I'll repeat that. It's www.mixcloud.com/LDNRT.